to make sure that you look at the entire thing. If they do something, just come and say, okay, any amendment or amendment, don't create a problem. So that's why we try to hear from the chairman. Luckily, he's an accomplished banker, financial expert. That's why we always ask him to have his view. And then we try to look at the entire and examine that any observation from the way to take any taking vote at all, the need taking vote at all. So, is it on the same issue or?
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Senator Victor Umentra, Senatorial District. Mr. President, without challenging the chairman of banking who presented this report, because he's a core professional banker. He has all the experience. But it matters that affect the interest of parties in a transaction like this. It is important that to look at the provisions the way they appear on the proposed amendments. First of all, the CBN, from what he has rightly informed us, owns 60% investment in NDIC. But the law envisages that there is need for insurance of depositor funds in the banks, that CBN will, through its examinations and regulatory powers, revoke their licenses, that they can no longer operate. And when that happens, you activate the claims of the depositors against the NDIC. It is the NDIC that pays depositors who have lost their funds in the foreclosed banks by the action of the CBN. So I think that it is very important that NDIC, who settles depositors who have lost their funds in the foreclosed banks, should have unhindered access to the books of the banks that have been foreclosed. The CBN should not have the discretionary power to make revelations or documents available to the man who pays the depositors, how they arrived at their decision. I was struggling with the act to see any provision where a review of the powers as to what somebody who has lost his money in foreclosed banks, what the person will be entitled to, the type of compensation the person will be entitled to. Because what we know is that once a bank closes its doors on the announcement by the CBN, no matter what you have standing on your balance in the books of the bank, you're entitled to only 50,000 naira. Has it been amended? How much? 5 billion? 5 million? It is still nothing. Mr. President, this thing is very critical. Some people have lost 200 million, 700 million in the banks. I'm coming. He will respond. Let him hear me well. Because we are representing the public, people who invest and do business in these banks. The Unity Bank lost its license recently, and I know a customer whose money, 700 million naira, was trapped in the bank. Will 5 million naira be an adequate compensation to him? Because when we hear about these laws, we should begin to think about how to make adequate provision for protection of people who have lost their funds in the banks, which the CBN did not give any notice that they will soon take away the license. And they'll be going to bank, going away every day. Suddenly in the morning, they hear at the bank, license has been revoked, and the NDIC will now come to pay 5 million. So there must be a provision in this act, in this amendment, to make it have a human face, so that when people lose their monies, they will be entitled to reasonable compensation. That's what I'm saying. Because if we continue this way, Anyway, the CBN waves the hammer. If you have 1 billion, their 1 billion is gone. You go and apply for 5 million naira. Thank you. I speak on behalf of the masses. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Sitting as the chair. Let me first clarify that already we have in all the extant laws guiding both CBN and NDIC adequate provisions to protect depositors' funds. Now, on a yearly basis, all the banks, they pay to CBN, to NDIC, an insurance premium to continuously cover all of the insurance of deposits that you have in the system. Now, equally, they also, because you probably cannot codify all the laws into one document, they also issue circulars on an ongoing basis to also address all of the challenges they see as they go along. So as an example, up until April this year, the deposit insurance cover for any depositor hitherto used to be 200,000 and has since been increased to 5 million minimum. Now, that is responding to changing circumstances and all of that. Now, just this weekend, we had a retreat with NDIC. And for those of our members that were present, they can attest to the fact that even at this 5 million, the part of the models, the explanations and the presentations that were made to us also will suggest that at 5 million today, it covers per bank almost 90% of depositors. Almost 90%. There is no, you cannot possibly see all of the risk that can be attributable to business, but to the extent that it reasonably covers 90%. You can check, the part of the examples that was given in the just liquidated Heritage Bank. At 5 billion, almost 99% or 98% of the depositors were covered. So the question might be, what happens to the rest? Of course, the typical thing that will happen is that the rest will also still be taken care of upon the realization and the sale of the assets of that bank. So to that extent, all of your worries, I think, are properly taken care of. These are technical issues. We cannot just rise on the spot and say you want to kind of change it overnight. They are very technical. So I so submit, Mr. President. Thank you.